It is 3 in the morning and you are staring at a number on your phone, not your bank balance. Your investment portfolio, it just moved by $30,000 in a single day. That is more than some people earn in 6 months. And it happened while you were unconscious. But here's what nobody explains about crossing the $1 million line. How the math changes, how your brain changes, and why the exact steps that get you there are embarrassingly boring. My name is Kay, and I help people understand how money actually works by bridging Japanese financial psychology with American financial reality. Here's why this matters. Everyone obsesses over the $1 million number, but almost nobody talks about two things. First, what fundamentally shifts once you actually cross that line. And second, the repeatable, unsexy math that gets you there in the first place. It is like training for a marathon with zero idea what the finish line actually looks like or which roads even go in that direction. Today, I am going to give you both, the destination and the directions. Let us start with why $1 million is not just a big number. It is a fundamentally different financial reality. When you have $10,000 invested earning 7% annually, you are generating about $700 a year. That is nice. It is also meaningless. Buy yourself a mediocre vacation and the year's returns are gone. When you have $50,000, you are looking at around $3,500 a year. Helpful, but you are still completely chained to your paycheck. Your investments are a side character in the financial movie of your life. Now here's where the math starts working in your favor in a way that almost feels like cheating. $1 million at that same 7% generates $70,000 a year without you lifting a finger. That is more than the median US household income. 0 hours worked, 0 commute, 0 passive-aggressive emails from a manager who peaked in 2012. Your money is not just contributing to your lifestyle anymore, it is funding your entire lifestyle by itself. Your capital becomes your employee, working around the clock while you sleep, while you travel, while you sit on a beach arguing about whether the ocean is teal or turquoise. This is the first wealth threshold where capital starts outperforming labor for the average person. And I can hear you already. That is great for millionaires, Kay, but how does that help me right now when my checking account has the same energy as a deflating pool float? Fair question. So let me show you the bridge between where you are and where that number sits, because it is closer than you think. Let us talk about the actual math of getting to 1 million. And I'm going to use real numbers, not the motivational poster version. If you invest $500 a month into a broad index fund, averaging 7% annual returns, you hit 1 million in roughly 28 years. That sounds like a long time. That sounds like watching paint dry on a wall you painted the wrong color. But here is what people miss. The timeline compresses dramatically as your contributions increase. Bump that to $1,000 a month, and you're looking at about 21 years. $1,500 a month gets you there in roughly 17 years. And if you can manage $2,000 a month, you are crossing the $1 million line in about 15 years. Now, the part that actually matters, you do not start at $2,000 a month. Almost nobody does. You start at $200 or $300 or whatever you can scrape together after rent and groceries and that streaming subscription you keep forgetting to cancel. And that is completely fine because the goal is not to max out on day one. The goal is to start, automate, and then increase the amount every single time your income goes up. A 5% raise at work does not mean 5% more spending. It means 5% more invested. That is the single most important habit separating people who reach 1 million from people who spend 40 years talking about how they are going to start investing next quarter. I have been saying next quarter since approximately 2014. I know how this works. Here's where the quietly wealthy do something that sounds like a small difference, but is actually the entire difference. They flip the spending equation. Instead of investing what is left over after spending, they invest first and spend what is left over. Set up an automatic transfer the day after each payday. Remove the decision entirely because decision fatigue is real, and your tired brain at the end of a long Friday will always choose comfort over discipline. Automation beats willpower every single time. Your willpower is a finite resource. Your automatic bank transfer is not. Now let me show you what changes psychologically once you actually start building real momentum. Because this is where it gets interesting. The first major shift happens somewhere around $50,000 to $100,000. I call this the escape velocity zone. Before this point, every financial setback feels catastrophic. a car repair, a medical bill, an unexpected job loss. Any one of these can erase months of progress and send you spiraling back to zero like a really depressing board game. Your brain is constantly running worst-case scenarios. You lie awake doing mental math about whether you can cover next month's rent if one thing goes wrong. That is survival mode. And survival mode makes you conservative, reactive, and terrible at long-term planning because your brain literally cannot think past the next 30 days. But once you cross that $50,000 to $100,000 range, something shifts. Psychologists would call it moving from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. I call it the difference between flinching every time your phone buzzes with a bank notification and actually opening your investment app with curiosity instead of dread. When you have 3 months of expenses saved and $50,000 invested, a car breaking down is annoying. It is not a crisis. A job loss is stressful. It is not an emergency. You stop avoiding your account balance like it is a text from your ex. You actually check it voluntarily. Sometimes even on purpose. Sometimes twice before breakfast. I remember the first time I had enough saved that a car repair did not ruin my week. The mechanic said $800 and I just said, okay. No cold sweat. No rapid mental math about which bill I could delay. No pretending I needed to think about it while secretly Googling whether I could fix a timing belt with YouTube and optimism. I just paid it and drove home, and it was the most boring, beautiful moment of my financial life. That kind of financial calm changes how you operate in every other area of your life. You negotiate better because you are not terrified of losing. You sleep better because your brain stops running emergency calculations at 2 in the morning. You even make better relationship decisions because desperation has left the building. That is not a small change. That is a complete rewiring of your relationship with money. And confident people make better financial decisions, which accelerates the whole process. It is a positive feedback loop. More money creates more calm. More calm creates better choices. Better choices create more money. The hardest part of the entire journey to 1 million is getting through the first 100,000. After that, momentum starts doing some of the work for you. But the real transformation happens at 1 million. And there's a psychological shift that catches everyone off guard. You stop being a saver and become a capital owner. Those sound similar, but they are completely different realities with completely different rules. When you are a saver, you are thinking in terms of accumulation. Every dollar matters because you are building towards something. Your entire strategy is a fence. Earn more, save more, grow the pile. But when you become a capital owner, your mindset shifts to preservation and optimization. You are no longer trying to get rich. You are trying to stay rich. And that requires completely different skills, like going from learning how to build a campfire to learning how to keep a house from burning down. When you had $20,000 invested, a 10% market drop cost you $2,000. That stings, but it is recoverable in a few months of normal contributions. When you have 1 million invested, that same 10% drop costs you $100,000. That is more than what most Americans earn in a year, evaporating from your net worth while you were trying to decide what to have for lunch. Suddenly, market volatility is not just numbers on a screen. It is real money that could fund 2 years of living expenses. But here is the part. People do not understand until they experience it firsthand. Once you have significant capital, market downturns stop feeling like disasters and start feeling like opportunities. You have the cushion to weather temporary storms. More importantly, you have the capital to buy assets at discounted prices when everyone else is panic selling and posting about the end of capitalism on social media. This is how wealthy people really separate themselves. They use crashes to get wealthier while everyone else is getting poorer. Same market, same crash. Completely different outcomes depending on whether you have capital or you are capital dependent. Now zoom out. Your relationship with work changes completely at this level. I am not talking about quitting your job and moving to Bali, though some people choose that path and honestly good for them. I am talking about working from a position of strength instead of desperation. When your investments can theoretically cover your basic living expenses, every career decision becomes a choice rather than a necessity. You can walk away from a toxic work environment without the financial panic that keeps most people trapped in jobs they stopped enjoying 3 promotions ago. You can negotiate harder because you are not desperate for the paycheck. You can take a calculated risk like starting a business or switching industries because you have a foundation that will not collapse if things do not work out immediately. This is what I call walking away money. It does not mean you actually walk away, it means you could. And that knowledge changes everything about how you carry yourself professionally. People who negotiate from strength get better outcomes. People who choose work they care about perform better. People who are not operating from fear take smarter risks. The irony is that financial security at this level often leads to even more income, not less, because confidence compounds just like interest does. You become a better version of your professional self when you are not silently terrified of losing your paycheck. Here's another thing that shifts at 1 million. Tax optimization goes from an afterthought to a core strategy. When your investment gains are generating significant income, the difference between paying 15% and 25% in taxes becomes enormous. On $70,000 of investment income, that 10 percentage point gap is $7,000 a year. Over a decade, that is $70,000 gone simply because you did not pay attention to where your assets were parked. That is an entire year of passive income vaporized by tax inefficiency. Tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k and an HSA reduce your taxable income on the way in. Roth accounts let your money grow tax-free on the way out. Capital gains timing, tax loss harvesting, asset location between taxable and tax-free accounts. All of this becomes worth the complexity when the dollar amounts make the effort meaningful. The quietly wealthy do not just earn more, they keep more. And keeping more is functionally identical to earning more, except you do not have to work additional hours for it. Let me make this concrete with a comparison. Take two people, Smart Sam and Broke Brian. Same age, same starting salary of $60,000 a year, same city, same basic intelligence, same access to the same financial tools. Smart Sam keeps his expenses flat even as his income grows over the years. He automates 15% of his take-home pay into a broad index fund from day one. He never carries a credit card balance. He keeps his housing and transportation costs below 50% of take-home pay. He builds a 3 to 6 month emergency runway and treats it like it is radioactive. Every raise he gets, 80% goes straight to investments. Broke Brian does the opposite. He upgrades his car with every salary bump. His Instagram has more car photos than a dealership website. He saves maybe 5%, and only when he remembers to manually transfer it, which is roughly as often as he remembers to floss. He carries a rotating credit card balance at 20% interest. His housing and car payments eat up 65% of his paycheck. He has maybe 2 weeks of expenses saved on a good month. Fast forward 15 years. Smart Sam has crossed the $1 million mark. His portfolio is generating roughly $70,000 a year in returns, nearly matching his original salary without him working a single hour. His total monthly expenses are modest because he never inflated his lifestyle. He has options, real options. He could quit, switch careers, start a business, take a year off, or just keep working because he wants to and not because he has to. Broke Brian has about $45,000 in investments and $12,000 in credit card debt. Net worth roughly $33,000. He earns more than he did 15 years ago, but he feels exactly the same financially because his expenses grew just as fast as his income. He cannot leave his job. He cannot absorb a surprise expense over $500 without putting it on a credit card. He cannot negotiate from strength because he needs next Friday's paycheck to cover next week's bills. And here's the part that stings. From the outside, Brian looks wealthier. Better car, nicer apartment, more content on social media showing him living his best life. But behind the numbers, one of them owns his time and the other one rents it. The difference is not talent. It is not luck. It is not even income because they started at the same salary. It is 5 boring habits repeated over 15 years while everyone around them was chasing the appearance of wealth instead of building the real thing. If you are finding any of this useful, hit subscribe. I break down money psychology and wealth building strategies every week. Now here's where things get counterintuitive and honestly a little ridiculous. The more money you have invested, the more opportunities you have to make even more money with less effort. It is like the financial system has hidden levels that only unlock when you hit certain thresholds. Like a video game, except the power-ups are tax-advantaged lending facilities, and nobody told you the cheat codes. When you have $20,000, banks see you as a risk, a liability they tolerate because you pay fees. When you have $1 million in liquid investments, banks see you as a preferred customer. The same institution that charged you $35 for overdrafting by 6 cents is now offering you a personal banker and complimentary coffee. The financial system has tiers and nobody puts them on the brochure. Suddenly you qualify for investment property loans with better terms. You can get business lines of credit backed by your portfolio. You have access to margin lending that lets you borrow against your investments without selling them. This access to cheap capital is how wealthy people really accelerate their wealth building. They do not just save their way to the second million. They use their existing capital to acquire more capital-producing assets. It is like having a key that opens doors most people do not even know exist. And the people who already have the key are not exactly advertising where they got it. But here's where people mess up on the road to 1 million. They hear about these advanced strategies and try to skip ahead. They try to use leverage before they have a foundation. They chase complex investments before mastering the basics. They want the $1 million strategies on a $20,000 portfolio. And that is how people get wiped out. It is like trying to do a backflip before you can do a push-up. The boring truth is this: the path to 1 million is embarrassingly simple. It is just not easy. Spend less than you earn, not by a little, by a lot. Target saving and investing at least 15 to 20% of your income. If you can only do 10 right now, that is fine. Start there and increase it by 1% every 6 months. Automate everything: savings, investments, bill payments. Remove yourself from the process because your involvement is statistically the weakest link. Invest in broad, low-cost index funds, an S&P 500 index fund or a total market fund. Do not pick stocks, do not time the market, do not chase whatever crypto token is trending on social media this week. Your buddy who made $12,000 on a meme coin is not a financial genius. He is a lottery winner who thinks he cracked the code. The historical average return of the S&P 500 is roughly 10% before inflation and about 7% after. That is the engine that turns consistent contributions into $1 million. You do not need to be a stock-picking genius. You need to be a patient owner of the entire market. Boring as that sounds, the S&P 500 has outperformed the vast majority of professional fund managers over any 20-year period. The professionals with their Bloomberg terminals and their MBA degrees and their 70-hour weeks cannot beat the strategy of just buying everything and waiting. Increase your income over time. This is the variable people underestimate. Negotiate raises aggressively. Build skills that command higher pay. Add a side income stream even if it starts small. The difference between investing $500 a month and $1,000 a month is not just double the contributions. It is years shaved off your timeline. Every extra dollar that goes into investments compresses your path to 1 million. And the fastest way to find extra dollars is not cutting expenses until your life is joyless. It is earning more while keeping your lifestyle flat. And never carry high interest debt. Credit card debt at 20% interest is the opposite of compound growth. It is compound destruction. Pay it off aggressively and never let it come back. Your credit card company sends you a birthday email but charges you 20% to borrow your own purchasing power. That is not a financial relationship. That is a hostage situation with confetti. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, I am barely covering rent. 15% savings feels impossible right now. I hear you. And here is the honest answer. If you are starting from zero with tight margins, the first move is not investing a huge percentage. It is finding one expense you can cut and one way to earn an extra $100 a month. Cancel a subscription you forgot about. Sell something you do not use. Pick up a few hours of freelance work, then automate that money into an investment account before you can spend it. You are not saving leftovers. You are paying yourself first. Even if the number feels embarrassingly small, $50 a week is $2,600 a year. In 30 years at 7%, that is over $260,000. From $50 you never even noticed leaving your account. If any of this is making you rethink how you handle money, I built something that might help. There is a link in the description to a quick quiz that asks you a few questions about your financial situation and tailors a plan to your specific circumstances. It takes about 2 minutes and it is free. Worth checking out if you want something more personalized than a YouTube video. Now, the part nobody warns you about once you actually reach the milestone. Once you cross 1 million, your relationship with time completely transforms. When you are building toward that number, every hour you are not earning feels wasteful. You are constantly calculating the opportunity cost of relaxation. Taking a Saturday off feels like leaving money on the table. But once your capital is generating real income on its own, you realize your time has become more valuable than your immediate earning potential. This is when people start making completely different choices, working fewer hours, choosing more fulfilling work even if it pays less, taking longer breaks without the guilt, spending more time with family, pursuing things that do not generate revenue but provide personal satisfaction. And here is something that catches most new millionaires completely off guard. The anxiety does not disappear, it changes shape. When you had $50,000 invested, a 5% market drop meant losing $2,500. Painful, but manageable. When you have $1 million invested, that same 5% drop is $50,000. You can lose more in a single bad week than many people earn in a year. Your daily portfolio fluctuations start exceeding most people's monthly salaries. This creates a completely new type of financial stress that you cannot comprehend until you experience it. This is why many people who cross the $1 million threshold shift toward more conservative investment strategies. They start prioritizing capital preservation over aggressive growth. The risk tolerance that got them to $1 million is often not the same risk tolerance that helps them keep it. You might have been perfectly comfortable with 80% of a $50,000 portfolio in growth stocks, but having $800,000 in volatile investments hits differently even though the percentage is identical. Your brain does not process percentages. It processes dollar amounts, and dollars. Amounts at this level can make your stomach drop. But despite these new anxieties, most people who cross this threshold report feeling fundamentally more secure than they ever have. Not because the money eliminates uncertainty, but because it provides a foundation substantial enough to weather almost anything. Job loss becomes less threatening when you have years of passive income. Medical emergencies become less terrifying when you have real assets. Economic recessions become less personal when you own things that historically recover and grow. This security creates what I call the optionality mindset. Every major life decision becomes a choice between multiple good options rather than a desperate attempt to avoid disaster. Move to an expensive city for the culture or a cheaper one to stretch further. Both are viable. Take the higher-paying job you tolerate or the lower-paying one you love. Both are affordable. Stay in your career or start something completely new. Both are possible. That is the real gift of $1 million. Forget luxury. The actual prize is options. And here is something that makes the whole journey feel worth it in hindsight. The compound acceleration effect. If your $1 million grows by just 8% in a single year, you have made $80,000 without contributing a single additional penny. That is more than many people save over 5 or 6 years of aggressive contributions. This acceleration means your second million almost always comes faster than the first. The first million might take 15 to 20 years of grinding and discipline. But once that foundation is in place, the combination of continued contributions and compound growth on the larger base can cut the timeline to the second million in half, maybe even less. The math starts doing most of the heavy lifting. Your job is just to stay out of the way and not blow it with lifestyle inflation or panic selling during a downturn. Perhaps the most unexpected change that happens after crossing the $1 million line is how you start thinking about legacy. When you are building your first $100,000, your focus is purely on your own financial security. That is all you can afford to think about. But when you have $1 million invested and it is growing faster than you spend it, your thinking expands beyond your own lifetime. You start considering what happens to this wealth after you are gone.